was riding the bus home late one evening when a stranger leaned toward me and slipped a small photo into my hand. On the back of it were 4 words: "Get off at the next stop." My stomach dropped. When I looked at him and asked why, he didn't hesitate. He said, "You don't want to know." Moments later, the driver locked the doors, and I realized this was no ordinary ride. Before I continue, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment below where you're watching from. My name is Hannah Miles. I'm 25 years old, and that night I was heading home from the hospital after visiting my dad. He had been recovering from surgery, and I stayed later than I planned, so by the time I caught the bus, it was already dark. I was tired, drained, and honestly, just wanted to get back to my apartment, shower, and sleep. The bus was quieter than usual. A couple of teenagers sat near the back whispering to each other, and an older woman was nodding off near the window. The man who slipped me the photo was 2 rows in front of me. I had noticed him earlier because he kept glancing around, his eyes sharp and restless, like he was on guard for something. I texted my older brother Ethan as I settled into my seat. I told him I'd be home in about half an hour, and he told me to call him once I got there. He always worries about me, even when I tease him for it. That night, his words echoed in my head. "Keep your eyes open, Hannah. You never know." The bus moved smoothly through the city streets, headlights reflecting against the windows as we passed dimly lit blocks. For a while, it felt like a normal ride home. But when the man suddenly slipped that photo into my hand and whispered his warning, the normal feeling disappeared instantly. When I looked down at the photo in my hand, I felt my chest tighten. It was an old, grainy picture, maybe taken on a phone or even a cheap camera. At first, it didn't make sense, but then I realized what I was seeing. It was a picture of the very same bus I was sitting on, the same patterned seats, the same ceiling lights, even the same small scratch on the pole near the middle aisle. Only the bus in the picture wasn't empty. A shadowy figure stood in the aisle, its face blurred and dark, like whoever took the photo couldn't capture it clearly. The detail that froze me was this: the figure was standing almost exactly where I was sitting. I jerked my head up, half expecting to see someone right there, but the aisle was empty. The teenagers at the back were still whispering. The older woman was still dozing against the window, and the man who gave me the photo was watching me carefully, waiting for my reaction. My voice came out shaky, but quiet. "What is this? Why are you showing me this?" He leaned back slightly, his expression tight, and whispered, "Just trust me. Get off at the next stop." I wanted to ask more, but his tone made it clear that pressing him wouldn't give me answers. My palms were sweaty as I tucked the photo into my bag, my mind racing with questions I couldn't form out loud. I glanced toward the driver. He was an older man, gray hair under his cap, his hands steady on the wheel. But there was something about the way he kept glancing up into the mirror above him. His eyes were sharp, watching the passengers more than the road. Every time his gaze flicked into that mirror, my stomach turned. The bus slowed as we approached the next stop, and my heart leapt with relief. I gathered my bag, ready to step off, but before the doors could open, I heard a mechanical click. The bus rolled past the stop without slowing, the waiting passengers outside left standing on the sidewalk. My breath caught as the doors stayed shut, the lock clearly engaged. "Hey!" one of the teenagers shouted from the back. "You missed the stop!" His friend banged a fist against the seat in frustration, but the driver didn't respond. He kept driving, his face calm, as if he hadn't heard a thing. The older woman stirred awake and looked around in confusion. She pressed the button to request a stop, and the light above the aisle dinged, but the bus didn't slow down. Panic bubbled in my chest. I turned to the man who had warned me. "Why won't he stop?" He shook his head. "Because you're not supposed to leave. That's why I told you to get out when you had the chance." His voice was low, but the edge in it was sharp. I gripped my phone tightly, opening my messages to Ethan. My fingers shook as I typed. "Something's wrong. Driver won't stop. Call me." I hit send and slid the phone back into my lap, my heart racing as I waited for his reply. The bus turned off the main road and onto a side street I didn't recognize. The lights outside grew dimmer as we passed fewer stores and more empty buildings. The normal background sound of people shuffling or coughing was gone, replaced by an uneasy silence. Every passenger seemed to feel it. The teenagers stopped joking. The older woman clutched her purse, and even the man who had warned me sat stiffly, his jaw tight. I forced myself to stay calm, but my thoughts were spiraling. Was this some kind of robbery? A kidnapping? Or was it something far stranger? Something tied to the shadow I had seen in that photo? My eyes drifted toward the driver again, and I caught him watching me in the mirror. His stare was cold and unblinking, and it sent a chill straight down my spine. I quickly looked away, remembering the stranger's warning not to meet his eyes. The bus felt more like a trap with every passing second. The locked doors, the steady speed, the silence pressing in. It was all wrong. My instinct screamed at me to act, to do something before it was too late. I thought about pulling the emergency cord or yelling for help, but a deeper fear told me that drawing attention would only make things worse. The man who had slipped me the photo leaned closer again, his voice urgent but controlled. Listen to me. Stay calm. Don't look into the mirror above the driver. Whatever happens, keep your eyes down. His words only made my pulse race faster. What could possibly happen if I looked into a mirror? It sounded ridiculous, but nothing about this situation felt ordinary anymore. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to nod. My body was tense, every muscle tight, as if I was waiting for something terrible to begin. The bus rumbled deeper into the dark streets, each turn taking us farther from the safety of the city I knew. And with every mile, the locked doors and that cold stare in the mirror made me realize the truth. I wasn't just a passenger anymore. I was trapped. And whatever was happening on this bus was only just beginning. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as the bus kept moving deeper into the unfamiliar part of town. Every turn seemed to take us farther away from streets I recognized. The houses were fewer, the lights outside dimmer, and the silence inside the bus heavier with each passing second. The locked doors and the steady hum of the engine made me feel trapped, like I was sealed inside a box with no way out. I had to make a choice. Either I trusted the stranger who had given me the warning, or I pretended nothing was wrong and hoped it would end on its own. I glanced at the man who had slipped me the photo. He was tense but steady, his eyes scanning the bus as if he had done this before. His words echoed in my head. Don't look into the mirror above the driver. Whatever you do, keep your head down. The warning didn't make sense, but the photo in my bag, showing that dark figure, proved he knew something I didn't. I gripped my phone again, thinking of my brother Ethan. I wanted to call him right then, but my fear was that talking out loud would draw attention. The driver hadn't spoken once since locking the doors, but I could feel his presence every time he glanced into that rearview mirror. My chest tightened, and I forced myself to type another message. Driver not stopping. Locked doors. Feels wrong. Please call me in 5. I hit send and tucked the phone away, praying Ethan would notice and take me seriously. The bus slowed for a moment, and I thought maybe it was finally stopping, but instead, it made a sharp turn onto an even darker road. There were no more streetlights now, only the dim glow of the bus interior and the faint shapes of abandoned buildings passing by. My pulse hammered in my ears. If something was going to happen, it was happening soon. I had to decide how to act. My mind raced through options. Should I shout for help, demand the driver stop, or try to force the emergency exit myself? But the warning from the stranger kept pulling me back. If he was right, then making a sudden move could be exactly what the driver, or whatever he was, wanted. Leaning closer to me, the man whispered again, his voice urgent but calm. Stay with me. When I tell you to, move, don't hesitate, just follow. His certainty gave me a spark of courage, enough to steady my breathing. Why me? I whispered back. Why are you helping me? He shook his head. Because you listened. Most don't. His words sent a chill through me. I nodded, my throat dry. It was a choice now, and I made it. I would trust him. I couldn't explain why, but something about his conviction, the way he risked warning me when no one else did, told me he wasn't lying. The tension built as the bus grew quieter. The teenagers at the back were no longer laughing or whispering. They sat stiff, their eyes darting nervously toward the driver. The older woman near the window clutched her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. Everyone could feel it. The wrongness, the heavy air, the fear we didn't dare put into words. I made myself look down at the floor, keeping my gaze away from the driver's mirror. Every time the bus jolted or the engine growled, I flinched, but I held to the decision I'd made. Stay alert, trust the stranger, wait for the right moment. Minutes passed, like hours. My body was frozen between fear and readiness. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, each thump louder than the sound of the bus engine. Then, without warning, the bus slowed. My breath caught. We weren't at a stop. There were no stops out here, but the driver was easing the bus to the side of the road. The stranger beside me stiffened. He leaned close, his voice a sharp whisper. It's starting. Be ready. His hand gripped the rail in front of him, his muscles tense like he was preparing to jump. My throat tightened. What's starting? I asked, but he only shook his head. You don't want to know. I could feel the choice pressing down on me. I could stay in my seat, paralyzed with fear, or I could act. For the first time, I realized that doing nothing was just as dangerous as doing something. I pulled my bag tighter against my chest and whispered back, if you move, I'm with you. The driver's head tilted slightly, his eyes catching the mirror again. I could feel him watching, waiting. The air grew thick and cold, like the temperature had dropped. The silence was crushing, and every instinct screamed that something was about to happen. I braced myself, my legs trembling but ready to move. The stranger gave me one last nod. When I tell you, don't think, just go. In that moment, I knew my decision was made. I wasn't going to sit still and wait for whatever horror was hiding behind that mirror. I was going to fight for a way out, even if it meant running into the unknown. The bus rolled to a slow crawl and finally stopped on the side of a dark, empty road. The sound of the brakes hissed in the silence, and my whole body went cold. There were no houses here, no shops, not even a single streetlight, just trees lining the road like shadows waiting to close in. The driver didn't open the doors. Instead, I heard the mechanical lock click again, sealing us all inside tighter than before. The stranger leaned toward me, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is it. Don't look at him. Don't look into the mirror. Stay with me." My throat was dry, but I nodded, clutching my bag against my chest like it was some kind of shield. Then it happened. The driver slowly rose from his seat. He didn't turn to face us. He just stood there, his head angled so he could see everyone through the large rectangular mirror above him. The way his body moved was unnatural, too stiff, like a puppet controlled by invisible strings. A low hum filled the bus, not from the engine but from somewhere deeper, vibrating through the walls and floor. The teenagers at the back shifted nervously. One of them muttered, "What the hell is going on?" Against all warnings, his friend glanced up into the mirror. The moment his eyes met the reflection, his body froze. His face went slack, his mouth slightly open, and he slumped into his seat like a doll with its strings cut. The other boy shook him, panicked, but there was no reaction. His chest still rose and fell, but his eyes were wide, fixed on nothing. A scream broke out from the older woman near the window. She covered her face with her hands, refusing to look up. The sound of her fear made my own heart pound harder. I wanted to bolt, to claw at the doors until they opened, but the stranger gripped my wrist hard enough to anchor me. "Not yet," he whispered. "Wait." The driver's head twitched, and in the mirror, his reflection didn't match his body. His real body was still facing forward, but in the mirror, he was smiling. It wasn't a normal smile. It stretched too wide, his teeth bared, eyes black and endless. I felt my stomach twist. My instincts screamed at me not to look, so I forced my gaze down at the floor, focusing on my shoes, on the texture of the rubber mat beneath me. The bus grew colder. I could see my breath fogging in front of me. The hum grew louder, vibrating in my bones. My hands shook violently, but I clung to the stranger's grip. He leaned close, his breath quick. "When I move, follow me. Don't think. Don't stop. Understand?" "Yes," I whispered back, though the word nearly caught in my throat. The driver began to step slowly down the aisle. Each step echoed too loudly, like the sound was stretched, wrong. I could sense his presence even without looking, and every nerve in my body screamed at me to run. My nails dug into the strap of my bag, my heartbeat drowning out everything else. Then the stranger gave the word. "Now." He yanked me to my feet and bolted toward the back. My legs moved before my mind caught up, carrying me after him as the bus seemed to shudder violently around us. The older woman screamed again, and I heard a deep guttural sound from the front, something that wasn't human, like metal grinding mixed with a growl. The stranger threw himself against the emergency exit at the back. The latch resisted, then snapped open with a force that made the glass rattle. Cold night air rushed inside as he shoved the door wide. "Go!" he shouted, practically pushing me through. I stumbled out into the street, hitting the pavement hard on my knees before scrambling to my feet. Behind me, the stranger jumped down after me just as a terrible sound split the night. A voice, but twisted and layered, roaring in anger. The bus lights flickered wildly, and through the back window I caught a glimpse of the driver's face. It wasn't human anymore. His skin seemed to stretch too tightly over his skull, his eyes black voids, his mouth open far too wide, filled with rows of sharp, unnatural teeth. The bus engine roared even though no one was at the wheel, and the massive vehicle lurched forward, the open door slamming shut by itself. In seconds, it was speeding down the road, disappearing into the dark like a predator retreating into its den. I stood frozen in the middle of the street, my chest heaving, my body trembling so hard I thought I would collapse. My mind kept replaying the image of the teenagers, one of them lifeless in his seat, the other screaming for him. I couldn't shake the sound of the driver's inhuman voice, or that monstrous reflection smiling down at us. The stranger put a hand on my shoulder, grounding me. His face was grim but calm, like this wasn't the first time he had seen something like this. "You're safe now," he said, "but you need to understand. That wasn't just a driver. That's something that uses the bus, waiting for people to fall into its trap. Once you meet its eyes in the mirror, it owns you." I shook my head, trying to make sense of it. "Why me? Why did you help me?" His gaze softened just a little. "Because you listened. Most people don't." We stood there in the cold, watching the bus vanish into the distance. My body still ached from the fall, but the pain reminded me I was alive, that I had escaped. Barely. I stood on the side of that empty road, my knees weak, my breath still ragged from the sprint out of the bus. My heart wouldn't slow down. The sound of the driver's inhuman voice still rattled inside my skull, like it had carved itself into my memory. My whole body was trembling, not just from fear, but from the freezing night air that wrapped around me like ice. The stranger beside me, Jack, kept his eyes fixed on the darkness where the bus had disappeared. He didn't speak right away, and neither did I. We both knew what had just happened was not something words could easily explain. After what felt like forever, I found my voice. What was that thing? My voice cracked, thin and unsteady. Jack turned his head slowly, his expression heavy with something that looked like grief. "It's not the first time I've seen it," he said, "and it won't be the last. That's why I told you not to look into the mirror. That's how it pulls you in. That's how it keeps you." The memory of the teenager slumping lifeless in his seat slammed into me. My chest tightened with guilt. I couldn't stop thinking that maybe if I'd shouted a warning, if I'd told them what Jack told me, they might have been spared. But I hadn't. And now I had to live with that. "The boy in the back," I whispered, my throat burning. He didn't make it." Jack's jaw clenched. He looked down at the ground for a moment before answering. "Once you're caught, there's no saving you. That's why I focused on you. You listened. You still had a chance." I didn't know whether to thank him or to scream at him for not saving everyone. But deep down, I understood. He couldn't save us all. Maybe nobody could. My phone buzzed in my bag, breaking the silence. I scrambled to pull it out with shaking hands. Ethan's name lit up the screen. I answered with tears in my eyes. "Hannah, where are you? Are you okay?" His voice was frantic, raw with fear. I could barely get the words out. "I'm okay, I think. I'm not on the bus anymore. I can't explain right now, but I'm safe." Just hearing his voice grounded me, reminding me I wasn't completely alone in this. Jack stepped a little away, as if giving me space, but his eyes never stopped scanning the road. I asked Ethan to come pick me up, and while I waited, the cold crept deeper into my bones. The night was so quiet now that the silence felt louder than the roar of the bus had been. When Ethan finally pulled up, headlights cutting through the dark, I nearly collapsed into his arms. I sobbed against his chest, and he kept repeating, "You're safe, you're safe, I've got you." Jack stood by the roadside, watching. Ethan noticed him and asked, "Who's that?" I turned to introduce him, to thank him again for saving me, but Jack was already walking away. His shadow disappeared into the darkness, leaving me with more questions than answers. That night, when I got home, I thought I'd finally feel relief, but as I showered and crawled into bed, I couldn't shake the images from my mind. The driver's twisted reflection smiling in the mirror, the lifeless eyes of the boy in the back, the way the bus seemed alive as it sped away without a driver. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it all again. I slept with every light in my apartment on. The next morning, I opened my bag to look for my phone charger. My hands froze. Tucked between my books was the same photo Jack had given me, the one showing the shadowy figure in the aisle. Only now, it was different. The figure was no longer blurred. Its face was clearer, sharper, and it was staring directly into the camera, directly at me. My stomach dropped, and I shoved it back into the drawer, but I knew that hiding it wouldn't change anything. In the days that followed, I tried to go back to normal life. I went to work, visited my dad at the hospital, and kept up my routine. On the surface, I looked fine, but inside, I was different. I found myself avoiding buses altogether, even if it meant walking for miles. I couldn't stand mirrors in public spaces. Sometimes I even draped a cloth over the one in my bedroom, because the thought of catching the wrong reflection was too much to bear. The worst part was knowing that the bus was still out there. Somewhere, another driver was locking the doors. Another passenger was staring into that mirror without understanding what it meant. And another family would soon be grieving someone who never made it home. That knowledge ate at me, made me feel powerless. But it also taught me something. Sometimes the scariest warnings don't come with full explanations. Sometimes they're short, sharp, and demand blind trust. If I hadn't listened to Jack, if I had shrugged off his strange warning, I wouldn't be here telling this story. Trusting a stranger saved my life. Even now, I don't know why he chose me, why he risked himself to help me. Maybe he had lost someone before and couldn't stand to watch it happen again. Maybe he saw something in me worth saving. All I know is this: when someone risks everything to warn you, don't wait for proof. Listen, that night on the bus changed me forever. I don't sleep in total darkness anymore. I keep lights on, as if it's my way of reminding whatever that thing was, that it doesn't own me. Still, I know it's out there, and the photo in my drawer is proof it hasn't forgotten me either. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more stories like this, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.